Big week here in New York. You're here for the UN General Assembly, October, when the UN celebrates 80 years in existence. Can you talk about the organization, the accomplishments, and where you see it going in the future?
Well, back in Hungary, we respect United Nations pretty much because of our history. You know, we live in Central Europe, in the heart of the continent, and we have been losers of the era when the world was divided into blocks. We were at the wrong end, and we lost basically 4 decades of our lives, and we still feel the impacts of those lost decades, let's put it that way. And for us, all organizations which help not to divide the world into blocks again are helpful. So we want connectivity instead of blocks. And the United Nations have been created as a platform where everyone, even those who are in a hostile relationship with each other, can talk to each other. And this is the key, I think. As long as the channels of communication and the channels of diplomacy are open, there's always a hope for a peaceful solution, and there's always a hope that we can avoid the worst scenario, which is another world war. Let's put it this way. I always come with great expectations, I have to tell you. Then on many occasions, my expectations become illusions, unfortunately, because I think that there are many who do not look at the UN and the General Assembly as a chance to talk to each other and to make peace, but rather spreading narratives which are not helpful.
More lecturing than listening. Would you say, I mean, that's kind of the problem, it's more lecturing rather than listening?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. And here, I think we Europeans are not having a very good track record, because many European colleagues like to lecture the rest of the world, let's put it this way. They still think that European Union is a strong player of either global politics or a global economy, which is not the case anymore, by the way. And sometimes they feel that they are located at kind of a moral hates from where they judge the others, and this is not helpful. And what I feel here is that the respect towards the Europeans is decreasing, with a good reason, unfortunately, I have to tell you, and it is always pretty much respected when someone like us speaks out of the European mainstream. This is always being celebrated here, let's put it this way.
You have such a great relationship with Beijing, and you've been able to watch their role in peacekeeping, other areas when it comes to its particular environment within the UN. How do you view it?
Well, I had the chance to be there, I mean, in Beijing very recently on the parade at the beginning of September, and then we had a lengthy discussion right after with the foreign minister. You know, I'm working together with Minister Wang Yi for 11 years now. I think this is exactly the day, the 11th anniversary of getting into this position. So we have been working together with Wang Yi for 11 years. And I always respected a lot the role China tries to play in the new multipolar world, namely to stabilize and cool down those heated discussions and tensions which have unfortunately been going on. I have to tell you, I'm proud that Hungary and the People's Republic of China are belonging to the peace camp together. We do belong to the global pro-peace majority together. And what I hope is that the Chinese government and the president will continue to carry out this pro-peace activity. China, with its weight, with its size, with its capacities, can play a vital role when it comes to resolving conflicts all around the world.
You mentioned early on your first response about Hungary and its place when divided into blocks out was a loser in a sense. Yeah. One of the things that Xi Jinping has talked about, he talked about it in Tianjin at the SCO meeting recently, was global governance and reforming it and giving some of those smaller voices, the smaller states, a louder voice within the UN. Can you talk to me about how that resonates with Hungary and other countries?
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, we understand that this whole system of the United Nations should be reformed. Why? Because UN can fulfill its initial role less and less. We have to see that. I mean, and I'm not only speaking about the financial problems. I'm not only speaking about not being effective generally, but I mean, I cannot recall any conflict in the recent years which was or would have been resolved through a strong intervention by the United Nations itself. There were always big powers, countries who mediated, who brought some solution, but United Nations as such was not able to do anything like that. So I think that all those voices which are aiming at reforming the activities and the operation of the United Nations are well funded, and those make sense to discuss. So I think these upcoming years should be the years of great initiatives. And in this regard, we equally value the initiatives of President Trump and President Xi Jinping. And we do hope that the two of them will find the way of cooperation. And I say this from a very selfish Hungarian perspective, because we are a small landlocked country without any kind of energy resources in the heart of Europe, which has China as its #1 investment and trading partner outside of the European continent, United States as a #2 investment and trading partner outside of the European continent. So for us, small guys, small country, it's vital that the two big partners of ours find a way to cooperate with each other rather than they have a conflict, you know. So.
Well, talk to me about threading the needle. I mean, Viktor Orban visited President Trump when he was out of office in Mar-a-Lago. He has a close relationship with both leaders. You've met with Marco Rubio as well as Wang Yi, you just mentioned, 11-year anniversary. How does Hungary navigate this? Because so many people feel like you have to be pulled into the East camp or the West camp, and somehow you are able to thread the needle.
Well, we always follow the Hungarian national interest. This is #1. #2, that we always reject the approach that our foreign policy would be pro this or pro that, pro-American, pro-Chinese, pro-Russian. No, it's pro-Hungarian. It's pro-Hungarian. And again, a small-sized country, landlocked in the heart of Europe, being dependent on the well-functioning of the international global and political order, for us, it is vital that we keep our capacity and ability to talk to all big players is vital. So, I mean, we spoke very openly of the fact that we were crossing fingers for President Trump to win the election. We always speak openly that we see President Trump as the only hope to make peace in the Ukrainian conflict. We always speak very honestly and clearly about the necessity of keeping the channels of communication open with the Russians. We never made secret out of the fact that we have to maintain our energy cooperation with Russia, otherwise we cannot operate the country properly. We have never made secret out of respecting China and its leadership. And see, if now you pose the question, who is the European leader who can talk to both directions, or all three directions, let's put it this way, US, Russia, China, simultaneously, there's only one. Is the Prime Minister of Hungary, who can talk to all of these leaders simultaneously. And this goes back to our strategy, which is pro-Hungarian and follows the Hungarian national interest. We always carry out our foreign policy on a rational basis, common sense. I think over-politicization and over-ideologization of foreign policy is very dangerous. And we see the outcome of this phenomenon, that international politics are now to a big extent over-politicized and over-ideologized. And we see the consequences, the wars, the sanction regimes, the restrictions, the skyrocketing energy prices, the economic uncertainties, and so on and so forth.
Talking economy, in July you said this: Hungary proudly serves as the primary European destination for Chinese capital. Proudly. Talk to us about this relationship. Where is it today, and where do you see it going?
Look, last year, 31% of all Chinese investments targeting Europe arrived in Hungary at the end. The year before, it was even 44%. And we are proud of that because we always win these competitions to attract Chinese capital to Hungary against very strong Western European countries. So for me, it's a bit funny when Western European countries complain about the presence of Chinese capital in Europe, but they usually complain of this phenomenon always after losing competitions or races for Chinese investments. Because I'm responsible in the Hungarian government for investment attraction. So I negotiate personally these big investments. And I know that in case of these big Chinese investments, my competitors were Western Europeans, always. And they wanted desperately these investments. And once they lost these races, they always started to complain about the presence of the Chinese capital. So it's very hypocritical. So if you look at the current European political, let's say, aspects, you see a big bunch of hypocrisy when it comes to energy from Russia, you know. Always those are being criticized who do it openly by those who are doing it secretly. Same with the Chinese capital. We are proud to have them, while those who lose complain about that. So I have to tell you very clearly that the Chinese investments have contributed a lot to the Hungarian national economic performance. Plus, they contributed a lot to the successful operation of the German automotive sector as well. Because what happens in Hungary is that we became a meeting point of the Eastern and Western investors. As we are the only country in Europe besides Germany where all three premium German car makers are present with separate factories, they have attracted their Chinese suppliers to Hungary. And I'm usually being reached out by global CEOs of German companies to give cash incentives to their Chinese suppliers to come to Hungary to be close. So, I mean, this is the reality. And I understand that politicians try to artificially dig into that and, you know, cut these bonds. But, I mean, if we do that, then we kill the European economy.
Speaking of economy, global trade has been rather unsettled with all the tariffs imposed by President Trump. What's been the impact on Hungary?
Look, here I think that the European Commission and personally the President of the European Commission made huge mistake, a huge one, which has a very, very harmful impact on the European economy. And I tell you why. We should know that before President Trump entered office, European Union used to apply 10% tariffs on American goods, while the US used to apply only 2.5% tariffs on the European goods, which means that Europe used to apply 4 times higher tariffs against the American economy. When President Trump came into office, we told colleagues in Brussels, look, President Trump is a patriotic politician. He's patriotic in his political strategy and he's equally patriotic in his economic strategy. And if there's a patriot being the president of the #1 superpower of the world, then he will definitely use tariffs when it comes to economy. So we proposed to the European Commission to decrease the tariffs applied by Europe against US equally to 2.5%, equal to the tariffs applied by US, 2.5. Because if you have equal tariffs, then the other party has at least more difficult, you know, task to argue why it needs to be increased. But the European Commission was unable to do that. And then Madame von der Leyen signed the worst deal ever in European history from the perspective of European economy. I mean, if I was an American citizen, I would give a standing ovation to President Trump because he basically, like a super heavyweight against a featherweight, you know? I mean, von der Leyen had no chance. And then she tried to celebrate herself for reaching a deal in case of which Europeans have to pay 6 times more tariffs and the Americans get 0 tariffs. You know, and then even the liberal media in Europe, which always plays for Brussels, even liberal media was felt that this is a bit too much to celebrate this, so they rather didn't say anything about that. But this is the worst ever deal a European politician could make, harming the European economy. How we compensate that? Because we are part of the European Union, so we can't make a separate trade deal with anyone. How we compensate that is that we have an agreement that more American investments arrive to Hungary. It has a very positive impact on our national economy, obviously, with which we can mitigate the impact of this very bad tariff deal. So today I made an agreement with a US company here, which is number 8, the 8th American company announcing investments into Hungary since President Trump has taken office. So this is how we compensate.
So talk to me about the importance as we start seeing, you know, the way you've described the world with these camps and people with different polarized views, the importance of multilateralism. Obviously, Hungary sees it as vastly important, and global governance. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
Well, for us, as again a small country, multilateralism is extremely important. And where we see the the major issue here is that our interest is that that international politics comes back to the basis of mutual respect, because I think this is what we currently miss or lack. That the basis of the international political discourse or activities is absolutely not mutual respect. It's hostilities, it's lecturing, it's accusation, it's cornering, you know, and this brought us to a situation that there is a risk of an outbreak of a third world war, obviously. As long as the big guys, sorry to say that, talk to each other, then the risk can be, you know, kept low. But I mean, once they are not able to talk to each other, this risk grows again. So reforming the operation of the whole global political scene, I think, is the way to get rid of these tensions which are now influencing our everyday life. So mutual respect and the respect towards international law have to be brought back in order to reform the global political agenda.
You talked about hostilities and lecturing. Hungary's been the victim of some of that.
for
Clearly,
sure.
you closed your borders to migration early on. Now you see other European countries kind of following your lead. Does that give you a sense of vindication?
Look, if you look at the European politics, then I think you can rightly say that at a certain point of time, the Hungarians might not be right, but time will prove that they were right, you know. So, I mean, 10 years ago, we have been attacked like hell. We have been accused with the worst possible terms for closing our border and not allowing illegal migrants coming in. Now, Madame von der Leyen praises the countries on the eastern flank of Europe to close their borders and keeping migrants out. But in the meantime, we Hungarians do have to pay €1 million penalty daily to Brussels, violating the asylum issues, because we have simply closed our border for illegal migration. Or this goes with the war. I mean, in Ukraine, 3.5 years ago, when the war broke out, we made it very clear we would not deliver weapons. We argue for ceasefire and peace talks. We have been accused as the puppet of Putin, as the propagandist of Kremlin, as the spies of the Russians, that we want Ukraine to capitulate. And now those who accused us are saying the same, that ceasefire must be made and peace talks should be started, or the gender issue. So there are, in these big issues, we prove to be right at the end of the day. No one will recognize it, of course, because the politics is not a job where you're going to be recognized after years. But the people back in Hungary support it, and this is something that matters to us.
Steps needed. You mentioned Ukraine. Obviously, it's going to be the discussion at the UNGA as well as Gaza. What are the steps that are needed from your vantage point?
Look, we're happy that President Trump could resolve some of the conflicts in the recent weeks and months. Unfortunately, the two major ones, which are impacting us the most, the conflict in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine, have not been resolved yet. I think that when it comes to Ukraine, the former Democrat administration and the current European leaders made a lot of efforts to undermine the peace efforts of President Trump. They are rather interested in prolonging the war than ending it. And when it comes to the Middle East, you know, I was the only foreign minister of the world back, it was 2020, as far as I remember, who participated personally on the signing ceremony of the Abraham Accords in the garden of the White House. And I think that the Abraham Accords represented a hope that peaceful coexistence of nations can come back, nations and peoples can come back to the Middle East. So moving back towards the Abraham Accords in the Middle East and helping President Trump's peace efforts in Ukraine, I think those are the key elements which should be made in order to resolve these two conflicts.
I know you've got to run. You've got a very busy day, but let me ask one final question, which
please.
pertains to running.
Please.
What people don't know, you get in around 2 o'clock in the morning, you put on the running shoes, you're out there running. Does it help clear your mind? What does it say about you, the person? I mean, that you're out there, and you're not just running a mile. I mean, you're running. It's like a half marathon, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I feel bad if I can't do my training in the morning, to be honest. So I always wake up early in the morning. I do my training, either running or gym. But if I don't do that, then I struggle during the whole day. So I rather want my colleagues avoid struggling because of me struggling. So I rather do it.
Does it help clear your mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, at least I think it does.
Well, it prepares you for interviews like this.
Yeah,
Thank you so
right.
much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks.